Andava Punjabiyadi Jai Yashoda Yashoda Yam Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class in the penultimate day of Kartik in the year of 2024. So we're reading from Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 5, Narada Muni, first by Prajapati Daksha, text 38. Let's see. I hope this is the correct place. Narayanam namaskrityam naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamutiraye nashtaprayashva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavata shloke bhaktir bhavati naishiki evam tvam niranu krosho balanam matibhidharehe Parashadita Madhyacharasi Yashohani Patrapaha Evam Tvam Niranukroshu Balanam Madhibhidharehe Parashada Madhyacharasi Yashohani Patrapaha. Like to read. Evam Tvam Niranukroshu Balanam Parshada Madhyacharasi Yashohani Patrapaha. Anyone online? Would you like to chant the Rasayana? Please.
Evam tvam niranu krosho balanam matibid darehe parshada madhire charasi yashoha nirapatrapaha.
Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else? Evam, thus, Tvam, you, Narada, Narunukroshaha, without compassion, Balana, of innocence, inexperienced boys, Matibhit, contaminating the consciousness, Harihe, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Parashada Madhye, among the personal associates, Chalasi, travel, Yashaha, defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Nirapatrapaha, although you do not know what you're doing, you're executing sinful activities without shame. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Prajapati Daksha continued, thus committing violence against other living entities and yet claiming to be an associate of Lord Vishnu, you are defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You needlessly created a mentality of renunciation in innocent boys, and therefore you are shameless, devoid of compassion. How could you travel with the personal associates of the Supreme Lord? Please repeat. Prajapati Daksha continued, thus committing violence against other living entities, and yet claiming to be an associate of Lord Vishnu. You are defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You needlessly created a mentality of renunciation in innocent boys, and therefore you are shameless and devoid of compassion. How could you travel with the personal associates of the Supreme Lord? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. This mentality of Prajapati Daksha still continues even today. When young boys join the Krishna consciousness movement, their fathers and so-called guardians are very angry at the propound of the Krishna consciousness movement because they think that their sons have been unnecessarily induced to deprive themselves of the material enjoyments of eating, drinking, and merrymaking. Karmis, primitive workers, think that one should fully enjoy his present life in this material world and also perform some pious activities to be promoted to higher planetary systems for further enjoyment in the next life. A yogi, however, especially a bhakti yogi, is callous to the opinions of this material world. He's not interested in traveling to the higher planetary systems of the demigods to enjoy a long life in an advanced materialistic civilization. As stated by Bhagavatam Saraswati, Kaivalyam Narakayate Tidasha Pura Akasha Pushpayate. For a devotee, merging into the Brahman existence is hellish, and life in the higher planetary systems of the demigods is a will o' the wisp, a phantasmagoria with no real existence at all. Pure devotee is not interested in yogic perfection, travel to higher planetary systems, or oneness, Brahman. He is interested only in rendering service to the personality of Godhead. Since Prajapati Daksha was a karmi, he could not appreciate the great service Narada Muni had rendered his 11,000 sons. Instead, he accused Narada Muni of being sinful and charged that because Narada Muni was associated with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord will also be defamed. Thus, Daksha criticized that Narada Muni was an offender to the Lord, although he was known as an associate of the Lord. Om Jnana-timirandasya Dhananjana-shlakaya Chakshurunmitani Tasmai Shri Bhagavatam. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padeshwadi Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachari Shri Shri Vadi Paschatya Shita. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasa Gaurav Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Evam twang niranikurusho balanam mantibhitare. Arshada madhyacharasi yashoha rapat. Prajapati Daksha continued, thus violence against other living entities, and yet claiming to be an associate of Lord Vishnu, you are defaming the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You needlessly created a mentality of renunciation in innocent boys, and therefore you are shameless, devoid of compassion. How could you travel with the personal associate of the Supreme Lord? So Daksha is incensed with anger, hence he is charging Narada Muni, leveling these accusations against them, although they are not true. If you only took a slice of if one only looked at the incident from the time that the Haryatras were performing their austerities to this point, it would seem that what Prajapati Daksha is saying is true. However, if you look at the grand scheme of the entire Bhagavatam, you look at how the cycle of birth and death is going on in this material world, in this particular universe, how Brahma was subjected to feeling lusty desires even towards his own daughter. How Brahma creates the different layers of ignorance that we've discussed. Um, the entire scheme. Then basically what Daksha is saying, he's an illusion. Because as Prabhupada is saying here, is that uh, you have to look at the activities of Narada Muni in the grand scheme of the entire cycle of birth and death. What is actually going on? The Chalavasvas have followed in the footsteps of their brothers and they've taken to a life of renunciation. And so Narada Muni has actually performed the greatest welfare to these young boys. However, as Prabhupada is saying here, the mentalities of the karmis, fruitive workers, they do not look at the grand scheme of things because they are simply attached to the body. They're attached to artha, objects of the senses, and what will actually give them gratification now. So for karmis, generally, because they live a very refined life, they are attached to the subtle body. So persons perform pious activities, um, you they come to the temple, they offer their obeisances, they offer a lamb, they pray to the Lord, come to Janmashtami, um, not for the purposes of performing devotional service, but simply for the purposes of nullifying bad karma in their life. Now that they're here in the US as immigrants, they're seeing how to make things auspicious for themselves. So when you approach Krishna with that mentality, in other words, you're approaching Krishna because you're desiring some form of wealth. The artha that they are trying to accumulate is really for the subtle body. So they're trying to situate the subtle body in a good condition so that they can actually get elevated to the higher planetary system. So so there's like gross quote unquote karmis, but really they're just Kali Yuga denizens. They've been manipulated into thinking, they've been manipulated and convinced by the under Tamisra. YOLO. Under Tamiltra is YOLO. You only live once. So for such persons who live, from weekend to weekend drinking, they are attached to the gross body. So you find their life is generally uh, it's concerned with accumulating objects for the gross body. So alcohol, meat eating, um, you know, eating various foods, etc., like that. And then you have karmis who basically they're considering the next life. So they are trying to make things auspicious for the next life. So you find, okay, they try to raise their children very nicely. Uh, they get them to be pious. But ultimately, this is unearthed. This is actually unwanted. So the yogis and the Mayavadis, they are convinced that all this stuff is actually unwanted. But because of not, because of still being contaminated by tamas, by some ignorance of the soul and what the Sanatana Dharma of the soul is, they naturally then become attached to another type of material enjoyment. So for the yogis, uh, they are really interested in freedom. So the mystic cities, if you look at them really, the underlying desire for those cities is really freedom. The idea that if I have unbounded freedom, that I can, if I get a pomegranate from Afghanistan, it's probably would use an example like that. Or I could even use remote viewing and actually view in higher planetary systems. So Kandidi Prabhu, he has this seminar, Atma Paradigm, and yeah, he speaks about Stanford. They actually have he went through a training course on, they actually systematically train you how to remote view very far away places. And yeah, you can even use stuff on like, um, and Kalaswar Prabhu was telling me when he was down in Florida, Kandidi Prabhu was telling them that they viewed a place and it looked like there was like a figure of like a lion. And basically, yeah, it's like, and when you're viewing this place, it was almost like security. They could see that you're viewing, and therefore they have security systems. So it's very subtle technology, but if you're trying to view past a certain, you just feel this push, and they just push you back, and you can't see any. So, so even the high planetary system, they have yeah, subtle technology to prevent remote viewing. Just like on this planet, uh, yeah, the U.S. Air Force and U.S. military technology actually they have global surveillance. So like typically with radar systems, you can, yeah, it's the difficulty has been to view past the horizon. So like to get things to view things, over the horizon. But they have very sophisticated technology such that they can now one view past the horizon. One judge by the name of Judge Joe Brown, he was saying that in 1986 he was invited to a technology demonstration. And what they showed them was they had a guy writing on a notepad, and there was a satellite in geosynchronous orbit. So uh, it's outside the Earth atmosphere. And they were giving them a live feed. Now, this is in 1986, a live video feed of what the person was writing on the Earth or on a notepad. And you could actually see in detail what the person was writing. So this is a live video feed outside the Earth's atmosphere in 1986. So now you can only imagine the technology, that how sophisticated it is. Yes. So every time the government comes out and they say, "Oh, we can't find this terrorist, we can't find that terrorist," it's really not true. They know where everybody is. Um, yeah, when I was working for a bank in uh, in South Africa, we were using this technology called NiFi. And basically, this technology was developed by the NSA, and it allows you to create feeds, basically to merge data from multiple data sets. So, what the use case for this technology was that each person, we want to merge data about each American, credit card information, where they live. So, just from multiple data sources. And yeah, and basically you can just create, it's like, yeah, you can create hundreds of pipelines and merge it and then create a profile for one person. And so basically what happens is that they create these use cases, um, and then the NSA works on it, and then when they have a problem, then they release it to the Apache Software Foundation, which is the open source, and then they get different developers from around the world to add features, etc., that they can't do. And then the technology becomes very advanced, and yeah, the military, they'll hold on to, yeah, certain features that they find will threaten national security. And so in this way, yeah, the US military technology is very, very advanced. So how that relates to the subject matter is that um, you'll get told by different things. You'll hear like the politics on the Earth planetary systems that this is what happened 50 years ago. This is the mainstream narrative. This is what you get taught about school, about a specific leader. Um, but actually, if you get into the history, uh, a lot of these histories were shaped by different covert military operations. And if you had to actually, if people had to find out what what actually happened, it's very disturbing for people. Very, very disturbing. To the point that you'll have this kind of argument breaking out. Just like we are seeing with Prajapati Daksha and Narada Muni. So Prajapati Daksha is only looking at a slice of what happened between the Haryashvas and the Shavalasvas taking renunciation. So similarly, even on this very Earth planet, if you just take a slice of what is being taught about history, it seems like, well, this is true. But then if you look at military covert operations, military technology, etc., you get a completely different picture. And so, yes, and so you just have this dichotomy. So that's why even when Prabhupada would say, oh, they didn't go to the moon, um, you know, Prabhupada knew. He knew, he could see. Uh, these are just covert operations by the by the US government, just trying to get money for their moon program. But they don't have the technology to actually go and shake Chandra's hand. Um, they can't actually enter the Earth planet. I mean the moon planet, they can make different claims like that, but it's simply not true. Similarly, even when Jadweta Maharaj was questioned on the 9/11, and when he saw the headlines, he was like, "Yeah, this is it's all nonsense. It's just not true." We have great saints in our movement, uh, but they yeah, they don't focus so much on covert government operations and the lies that they tell, but they know that actually this is not the actual fact. We are being lied to. So even in the same way with Prajapati Daksha, you can view his accusations that he's leveling against Narada Muni. It's a lie. He's basically creating quote unquote misinformation about Narada Muni. But like it's based on having his perception of reality, what is real, what is beneficial. It's being challenged greatly to a very great extent. Yeah. So we can also, look at our Krishna consciousness as well, and the challenges that we're facing in terms of making advancement is that what will actually be for our benefit? What will actually give us benefit? The next tier to our spiritual advancement might be, oh, okay, well, we've been in Anartha Nivriti for a while. What will take me to Nishka? And what am I supposed to assimilate in my spiritual life right now to take me to this next level in my Krishna consciousness? And in the beginning, we may be kicking and screaming like Prajapati Daksha. Just resist renunciation. Yeah. So he's giving a very strong resistance. And so when you have a mentality, a karma mentality like this, you can actually have this resistance to spiritual advancement because he's resisting uh, because his whole worldview is being shaken to the core. His worldview is that my sons, you're born, you have debts. You're supposed to pay your debts, like taken to a brahmacharya, and then you have children. And then after you have children, then you burn off your good your good karma as well uh, through enjoyment. So you don't just turn your back off on good karma. No, you actually have to burn it off, and this is part of your how you pay your debt. And then after that, you can then take to renunciation later on. Once the sense is on strong, and and then you can focus on the Supreme Lord. But Narayana is saying no. That's risky, especially if for young boys who are actually ready. And Narada Muni is looking at it like, well, why should they wait? They've been cultivating this renunciation from a previous lifetime. They're ready now. So why should they go through the process again? So they should actually go back to Godhead right now. Yeah. So we can have some compassion for Daksha. Um, yeah, this intense anger that he's having, that we can relate it to our spiritual life and see, oh, well, okay, if going to the next level in my spiritual life is gonna, maybe I'm being asked to take second initiation, or I'm being asked to, I have a job and I'm being asked to go out on books every single weekend. So it means that I don't have a day off anymore. Uh, you know, or yes, it means that I have to, dial back my central enjoyment, even though it's allowed at the Grihastha ashram, for example. But I'm being asked to actually dial it down for the purposes of, so I'm being asked to renounce for the purposes of making advancement in spiritual life. Yeah. So, yes, we should have compassion for Daksha, that the mind is like just being blown. Just like with Brahma as well. Um, when the Brahma Vimohana Lila, when he took the cowherd boys away, and then for a split second he thought, oh, I should. For a moment he was like, oh, let me take them back. But his moment equal to 1 year, and so when he returned, well, he was like, okay, yeah, these boys, they're in the cave, they are still sleeping under my mystic power. But then there's also these boys and the cows and the calves, and they look just like the ones. So who are the real ones? And so Brahma, being able to discern between matter, like subtle matter, his intelligence is so refined. At that point, he couldn't actually tell what was real. So in other words, his mind of what is real and what is not real was blown. And so it's like if you um yeah, you might be put into a state of hypnosis, and then they tell you did something during hypnosis, and but then you couldn't discern what is real when you were in a state of hypnosis and when you weren't. And so then your entire reality is like, oh, did I do this? I can't. But I was like this. So you just basically, your internal circuitry, your mind, just gets caught in a recurring loop. And so basically his circuitry was just like sizzling. And Krishna then took it a step further and was like, well, look at these boys. These boys, cowherd boys and calves. He then turned them all into four-armed Vishnus. So his entire reality was just being blown up. He couldn't tell what was real, what wasn't real. And you have and then the Lord was compassionate on him. He then withdrew his that power, his mystic power of like expanding unlimitedly. And then he was just a little boy with some fruit salad in his little palm. And there was Brahma just praying to him, apologizing for the mistake he made, thinking that, because he had doubts, Brahma had doubts that um, this little blue boy, is this the original personality of God? Is this my actual father? So Yeah, so we can follow in the footsteps of Brahma, that when we are feeling challenged, like Daksha is feeling challenged by either a saintly person like Narada Muni or by a Shiksha Guru in our life, uh, by a devotee. Basically, when we're feeling challenged like this, we should, um, yeah, we should pray. We should really pray to the Lord for mercy and for strength. We can't see a way forward, but what we can see is that we are completely dependent on the mercy of the Lord. And so, by appearing to the Lord in this way, in this meek and humble attitude, um, then the Lord will actually become compassionate upon us and He'll actually show us the way. So, the way is not to criticize, the way is not to become resentful of devotional service, um, but simply to recognize that, yes, this situation is very, very challenging. So let me just become meek and humble before the Lord and pray. So on this penultimate day, in Kartik, we can pray to Radha Damodar that while there's been a great opportunity for us to make spiritual advancement, multiply the impact of our spiritual activities by 1,000, um, we should pray to the Lord that, yes, can you please help me to, yeah, just see a way forward. I want to make spiritual advancement. That advancement might require some level of renunciation. And that renunciation, in the grand scheme of things, is actually going to help me move forward. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions, reflections, or contentions?
He will challenge you.
We, something. Yeah. You can, sorry, switch it back on. Haribo.
Talking about how we really challenge and how we have been doing about that. It's actually fitting that we're in a part of the Bhagavatam where we're talking about the stations that's just going to show us opportunities. I think this is the representation pronunciation. I was also heard that sentence in the book word that talked about rendering loving something well, just going to or something this person. Even though it's not what I was actually is what I was and patience friends. So this to that level talking and no matter where they go, they just friends. And then I was also thinking about this at first. There's something about easy to retrieve to go back to the Christians when you're talking about that. No one sitting and praying to the verses. Stand up there.
Yeah. Comment. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, it's even though, yeah, Krishna consciousness is a gradual process, but it's very important for us to hear these verses and prayers and um, what the saints are saying about how it's just all about rendering service wherever you are. Because ultimately, what you're renouncing is the body. So the renunciation, it's about renouncing this material body so that you can get your spiritual body. You know, they're not like trying to cheat you, like, well, okay, you renounce your big house, I'm going to use it while you go. They're not like trying to pull a fast one like that on you, you know. So when you look at it, at the whole idea was renunciation in devotional service wherever you are in this true world. Because if you're going to get a hellish body. But to live there, you're going to get a hellish body. But you'll be rendering devotional service. That's the point. So even with Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying, oh, well, as long as I'm born in the house of a Vaishnava, even if I'm just like a worm, even if I'm just like in the Lord, the point is that you're getting the mercy of a Vaishnava. So, I mean, what challenges me is like, I'm here at Gita Nagari, of being in a human body, and I'm like, do I actually want to come back as a peacock at Gita Nagari? Like the peacocks, they eat sometimes they'll go to like the cow's poop. It's- The brains aren't fully digested, and so there'll be like specks of brains in the poops and they'll be eating. And I'm like, do I actually want to do that? And but if really I'm after the pure devotional service of the Lord, then taking birth as a living entity, even though I can't attend Bhagavatam class in the temple, but if I'm here in this holy place, then that's your perfection. That's really what they're saying. It really just cracks this crust of inertia and attachment to the body. Hearing these verses, they're very, very important. So even though you might not be able to do it right now, but at some point, uh, you will mature and you will actually be able to do it. Yeah. So we shouldn't be afraid of preachers like Narada Muni saying that you should renounce right now. Even if you're 20, you got your whole life ahead of you. No, do it right now. Okay, or but Narada, I have to apply for this job application. I wanna, serve Prabhupada's mission in this way. He's like, no, right now. Just just give your life to Radha Damodar, and that's it for this lifetime. Just one life. That's all. So yeah, it's very important to hear this. Do you have something?
Right, personal class. I have one reflection, one question. Whenever you're talking about, yeah, like covert operations and the government and them collecting all this data on us, I was just thinking about how whenever I was in university and studying all, about international relations and all how like the UN's got their schemes and the World Bank and this and that and the other, that it actually helps inspire our renunciation because even as devotees, just because of our past, even in this life and former lives, we actually buy into a lot of conceptions of like what will make us happy. But yeah, even practicing devotional service, like, oh, I mean, just for example, nothing against anybody that, has done this or is doing this, but like, let's say the American thing is like, oh, you have to have a mortgage. Like, that's just, you just have to have that. And it's like, and then in that way, somehow or other, you'll be happy. But even as a devotee, or even from like a material standpoint, if you just take a step back and you're like, why? Like, is everybody with a mortgage? So it actually like, and then let's say taking that mortgage thing, it's like, once you realize, oh, that's, for example, just being like perpetuated by the movies and culture and like this and that, then it actually helps. And like learning about the deeper layers of like what all the seeds behind it, it just helps you. It helps inspire renunciation, at least for me. So even before becoming or trying to become a devotee, I I was like, oh, that's like it's all just like a big shame. And then my question was, or do you have a comment? Do you have-
No, you've proceeded. Yeah.
and then my question was whenever you're talking about karmas, like those trying to approach Krishna for artha. I forget I was hearing recently, but we're also by and large as devotees, or at least myself, trying to approach Krishna for relief from distress, even if the initial first years have worn off, that like, oh, you just want to be happy, this and that. But it's pretty difficult if you're like miserable or bhakti by an extended or going through something difficult for an extended period of time. It's kind of like at least somewhat there's like, come on, Krishna, like I'm supposed to, chant be happy and all that. So yeah, and then you were saying like when we have a karmi mentality, we have resistance to renunciation and advancement. But thinking about that from the perspective of like relief from distress, that we can still have that karma mentality of like, oh, uh, I can't even give up my own personal happiness for the sake of Krishna, or at least temporarily. Not that we should have a whole miserable, but like doing something we don't want to do, doing a service we don't want to do like that, that actually like then I'm still having the karma mentality. So, yeah, I just wanted to before you can like elaborate on or had some thoughts.
Okay. Yeah, so those are in distress and desires of wealth. They are in different categories. You can have both desires in one body, but you want to at least look at these two things in different categories. That's why Krishna cites them explicitly. He says there are four types of persons. So types meaning they are actually in one sense different categories. So you can have one person maybe having three of those desires, but in this case, so we want to look at it separately because that way we can actually make sense of it. So those are desires of wealth. Typically, yeah, in this case, we're looking at the Shabbalasvas and Prajapati Daksha. They are healthy. They don't have mental issues. Their minds haven't been incinerated by mainstream media. These personalities are healthy. Um, the category you're talking about are people who are just coming into Krishna consciousness and they actually cannot perform the necessary austerities because of just poor health, poor physical health, poor mental health. And so for such persons, yes, when you look at the yoga system, the Ashtanga yoga system, there's um, uh, yama and niyama. So remote preparation and following rules and regulations. Just that's meant to actually restore your health. So all of the principles of renunciation, so practicing brahmacharya, eating healthy, non-violence, all of this, these are all material considerations, but they're meant to restore, have a working body, and at least like the subtle body, they can just like be in harmony. Not that you're being asked to wake up for Mangalarti and you're waking up for Mangalarti, and this is one of the austerities in bhakti. And when you wake up, like, you're just groggy, you can't like sleep continuously. Obviously, you're not going to be able to perform this austerity. So first of all, restore your health. Yeah. So yes, so sometimes, and for several years while you're trying to restore your health, you may resist some of the services that you're given. Um, but that resistance, if it's done in guidance, in other words, it's not like resistance like we're seeing in Prajapati Daksha, but it's just setting boundaries so that there's enough time in the day so that you can actually take care of your health and also perform some devotional service. Yeah. So I think that's really what you're speaking about here is persons who are in distress, but really they're in distress because of poor physical health and they just need to set practical boundaries, so that they can restore their health. Once your health is restored, yes, boom, you onward and upward, you just 10%, you perform devotional service. So as long as if while you're trying to restore your health, practicing yama and niyama, in devotional service, as long as you keep your eye on the prize. And your eye on the prize is to always be uh, render as much devotional service in a 24-hour period. Render as much as you can. Try to maximize that. So, us being Rupa Nugas, not many people are able to come to the level of only sleeping 1 hour a day and sleeping underneath the forest. I mean, last time I checked at Nagari, we have heating. Yes, we are under the forest. Our cabins are like surrounded by trees, but like we are not 10% Rupa Nugas. Like the way the six Goswamis were. They're sleeping underneath a different tree every night. And they're only sleeping a couple of hours. Why? Because they just had service. They had this pressure that, yeah, I just can't sleep. I have to write Nectar of Devotion. I have to write Lalita Madhava Vidakta. All of these wonderful shastras, we just have to write. That was the pressure. So, yes, we try to aspire for that, reduce your eating and sleeping gradually. Um, but yeah, for persons who can do that, they are in health. Yeah, you have to have a healthy working body and subtle body perform these austerities. Otherwise, it'll destroy you. I don't know if that answers your question.
That's not exactly. I
Yeah.
mean, I think I was asking it a different way, but I needed to hear that. So that's
Oh, okay. But you wanna say something? Okay.
thank you.
Okay, if we have pundits online, if they have any reflections in the few minutes, or they can answer this question differently.
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, you mentioned moon landing. What is the Vedic lens on space race? Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. I personally don't believe what is being purported in the actual case. Any Vedic Krishna conscious light you can provide.
Is that
This is from James. So, yep, Prabhupada, he said the moon landings were fake. There's a lot of evidence to support this. It wasn't that we're just saying Prabhupada said that. So the best thing is look at the evidence, make your own evaluation. I can't really, it's not like ISKCON Communications that's going to come out with the statements. The moon landings were fake. No. But I can just give you, of course, while sitting on the Vyasa Sun, we don't try to give our own opinions, but this is a material subject matter. Were the moon landings real and fake? And based on my look of the evidence, even though I was taught in aeronautical engineering, the mainstream narrative that the moon landings were real and all that, but having come to the US and learning about how covert operations shape world history, certainly the evidence says otherwise. Any other Yes, contributions, we have a few minutes.
I guess if we have a few minutes, I'm getting a terrible echo. It's really hard to speak with this echo going on. There's earlier today, I was thinking about the news media and also the sorts of discussion that goes on in social media, and I was just thinking about how unfortunate some individuals are that get caught up in these things. Right now, there are legions of individuals who are completely beside themselves over current events. Um, there are women that are cutting off all their hair. People are moving out of the United States, relocating, and imagining some dreadful thing happening. The capacity of the media to get people worked up is phenomenal, and for devotees particularly, to cultivate some degree of tranquility, to be able to peacefully prosecute Krishna consciousness, to be able to think of Krishna, to remember Krishna, how counterproductive it is to allow yourself to get caught up in issues of mundane politics, which Srila Prabhupada said is simply animal life, and so many other issues that really, in the broader scheme of things, are either insignificant or have little real bearing on what is important in our life. Um, Obviously, there are things that affect us materially, but sometimes it's useful just to tune out the noise. Um, if we're to have any fighting chance of trying to cultivate Krishna consciousness and maintain Krishna consciousness exclusively, um, really have to, as you say, set boundaries. And one important boundary, I think, is to really avoid a lot of the nonsense in the media. Um, News media. I actually did um, a study of uh, news reports over a period of a few years. That I was trying to find a source of reliable information. And so I was diving deep into different stories to find out what the facts were. And the conclusion that I came to was that there are no news agencies that are free from the tendency to report falsehoods, that they will actually lie, outright lies, um, because they have become um, political activists, and rather than uh, legitimate news agencies, journalism is not completely dead. There are still some reporters that are dedicated to trying to report facts, but mainstream media has become terribly corrupted, and it's a good idea to avoid these things because it serves. I don't think it's their deliberate intention to get people worked up necessarily, but for the sake of political expediency or whatever, um, they will propagate ideas that just are really, really disturbing to people. and you can get really, really caught up in it. It becomes addictive, like a lot of things, and really important, I think, to try to avoid these things if that's possible, or at least limit it as far as you possibly can, because as far as I can see, it's really, really harmful, really detrimental. I just see so much harm um, to people from these things. Um, you can go for months and years without hearing any news and suffer no ill effects. There was a time in ISKCON when Srila Prabhupada discouraged us from reading newspapers or hearing the radio news or watching television or any such thing at all. And devotees, Srila Prabhupada's disciples, by and large, they all followed these instructions. We didn't pay any attention to the news. I can remember stretches of time when I didn't even know what year it was. I didn't know what the year was. I didn't know who the president of the United States was, what to speak of others. And it didn't matter. It just didn't matter. It had no bearing on anything real in my life. The things that were important for my cultivation of Krishna consciousness, these things just did not matter. Anyway, um, I've gone way over time. I should stop. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Really appreciate your contributions. Yeah, so uh, with Prabhupada saying we should avoid mainstream news, it's not like it may seem like an extreme form of renunciation, but when you hear about this operation by the CIA called Operation Mockingbird, so basically how to create multiple news in the objective of the program was to create multiple news agencies that will just be in lockstep with one another. So you release a certain type of information and make sure that everybody is like saying the same thing. And in this way, you can actually capture a populace's mind. And so, Prabhupada is helping us to just steer clear of that so that we can, you know, just concentration on Krishna, remembering Krishna and not being bewildered by mainstream political narratives that have some underlying objective. Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you, dear devotees. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Nitai Haribol.